Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Here's our predictions for the upcoming 2023-24 season. In this video we'll predict where each team will finish from the relegation zone all the way up to the champions. So if you're new around there, subscribe to Gage Football for more vlogs, watch-alongs and other football content like this, and let us know your season predictions in the comments below. It'd be great to read those. So I'm with Mark and Dennis. Thanks lads for joining. So new season is upon us. So as I say, we'll choose where each team we're going to finish this coming season. Let's start off, unfortunately, with the teams in the bottom three of the relegation zone. So we'll start off with the team who we think will finish bottom. So let's go with you, Mark. Who's going to finish bottom of the pile?
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Bill. Really looking forward to this tonight. Yeah, for me, I think unfortunately it's going to be one of the new boys that I've got here. It's going to be Luton. I just think their sort of lack of, first time, 30 years, I think, or so they've been back in the league. I just think their lack of experience of being in the top flight is going to really hurt them. And I think as well, the first month of the season, obviously not playing at home, and obviously they're going to get those games back, obviously. But I think that will probably be an input, a big factor as well in my decision, really.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. So I've gone for another promoted side, and it's Sheffield United. I don't think they was as strong as when they got the last promoted under Chris Wilder, and obviously the overlapping centre backs. So I think they're a bit more predictable under Paul Heckingbottom. They've sold Ndiaye to Marseille, and haven't really replaced him. So that's a big blow. I think today they're going to sell Sander Berg to Burnley. So again, that's another blow to them, and I think they're just going to struggle to score goals. They've still got Brewster and the sort of the forward line from a couple of seasons ago who went McBurney. Do you know what I mean? Who were not exactly prolific. So I don't see where the goals are going to come from. So I think Sheffield United bottom of the pile for me. Dennis, for you?
I mean, it's a tiebreaker here, and I am going to go with Sheffield United, basically finishing bottom, because I feel that Luton, you say they've got to get those game in hands back. Depending on when they get them, they could be in a better form or be a bit more adapted to the Premier League. Whereas Sheffield United, the morale noises coming out of the club, and no, I'll be lying if I said I wasn't laughing. Sheffield United, the noises coming out of the club are not good. You mentioned Chris Wilder. I think Paul Heckingbottom isn't anywhere near as experienced as a manager. Maybe he had a better playing career, because obviously I don't really know what Chris Wilder's playing career was like. But ultimately, their team isn't as good as the one that went down, let alone that went up last time. Yeah. And after Project Restart, they had relegation form. So there's the old adage that I think once teams figured out how to play against them, and they didn't have the fans in there, behind them, they were over those year and a little bit worst team in the league by a country mile. I think they're finishing rock bottom personally, unless they pull off some stonking signings in the next 2 weeks. Could happen, but I don't see it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that obviously it's with all the clubs. That's the thing with doing predictions before the transfer window. You obviously just never know, especially on deadline day, as we all know. So 19th, back to you, Dennis, who's going to finish second from bottom.
Well, again, I'm taking my bias out of this, but it's going to be Luton. And, obviously everyone knows I'm from Watford, so I'll get pelters for saying they're not going to finish bottom on 0 points. I mean, a lot of Watford fans are trying to find excuses to give them points deductions, let alone finish with 0 points. But again, for the reasons Mark put them bottom, I'm putting them second bottom. But I feel that they'll get the wind in themselves. Their fans will be right up for it. And it's a very claustrophobic, small stadium, is Luton. Some of the big boys might not enjoy it there. They could nick a few points here and there. And from my memory, they've got a relatively young side as well. Young, enthusiastic, but they'll make mistakes.
Yeah, totally. Mark, I've got a feeling who you're going to put as 19th, but go ahead. Go ahead anyway.
Yeah, to be honest, it was a toss-up between Luton and Sheffield United. But yeah, kind of really what you guys were saying, really regarding, they seem to be selling their best players. Haven't really bought anybody in of any real note at the moment. And also as well the off pitch stuff as well with the ownership as well was one that I've sort of half watched a little bit over the last sort of 18 months and that, yeah, to me, that can't see how that's going to really be a positive for them in any way, shape or form in the league. But I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, totally. So same as you, Dennis. I've got Luton for 19th. I think they'll shock some teams with Kenilworth Road. Obviously, the tightness of the pitch and the stadium, obviously, and then going into the away fans going in someone Maureen's back garden. Do you know what I mean? So
Maureen.
yeah, but I just don't think they'll have enough quality over a 38 game season to rack up 11, 12 wins. I just don't really see it. They need to rely on Colton Morris to replicate his form from last season. He got 20 goals in the championship. But Ryan Giles looks a pretty promising player. I think he's like a left wing back. He did really well on Middlesbrough under Michael Carrick last season, so he's one to look out for. But yeah, just don't think they'll quite get enough wins. But Rob Edwards is a very bright coach. Obviously, infamously was Watford manager at the start of the season, then took over their arch rivals, got them promoted, and Watford finished mid-table. So karma and all that. Yeah, exactly, Dennis. Yeah. So but yeah, just I think they'll get some wins, especially at home, but I don't think they'll get many points away from home personally. So 19th for Luton. So the last relegation spot, this is really difficult for me. I'm sure you guys were the same. I could have picked for maybe 6 or 7 sides to join Luton and Sheffield United. But the news today has really sort of confirmed my choice for this last relegation spot, and it's Wolves. So it's been announced today that Lopetegui's probably going to leave Wolves. There was rumours at the start of summer that he might leave, and now it looks like that's actually going to happen now. So by the time this video is recorded, he probably would have left. I think Gary O'Neill is strongly linked. He did a brilliant job at Bournemouth last season, keeping them up. But just similar to Leicester really last season, sort of negative vibes. You're not really sure what's going on at the club. So FFP has really limited their summer business in the transfer window. They've only signed Matt Doherty, who was there a few years ago, and Boubacar Traore only scored 31 goals last season, which is pathetic, really. Amazing how they actually stayed up. And it's more the players they've sold that have been hit the headlines rather than the additions. So they've sold Ruben Neves for close to 50 million. Connor Cody, albeit he was on loan at Everton last season. Nathan Collins is now at Brentford, and Raul Jimenez joined Fulham. So that's a lot of experience and good quality that have left the club, and hardly any's come in. So, and as I say, Lopetegui's probably going to leave as well. So, I mean, for all those reasons, I've got Wolves to go down. Mark.
Yeah, as you said at the start, it's quite tough actually, and you could have easily picked probably one from 6 or 7. I'm not going with Wolves just because I think that if Gary O'Neill does take that job, how well he did at Bournemouth last year when everyone thought he was going to, they were going to get relegated after losing 9-0 against Liverpool. If he does get it, then I think they might do quite well. In struggle, but maybe not get relegated. But I'm actually going to go for Nottingham Forest in 18th. Right. I just feel that last year I'm still baffled that they managed to sign 20 odd players last year and still managed to stay up. I don't think that's ever
30
players. So even worse than what I realised. I should probably do research. So even worse than I don't think I've ever seen that in Premier League history. I don't think I'd be surprised if it ever happens ever again. Well, maybe apart from Chelsea spending money left, right, and centre. Yeah. And I just feel that that sort of second year bounce does sometimes hit, a team that had come up the previous year, and I know that they did struggle for large parts of the season, Forest, and I think their home form will be crucial. Their away form last year was atrocious.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But I feel that this year that teams will be a little bit more wise to them playing at home, a bit like what Dennis touched on before with Sheffield United. After the a couple of years back when they were in the league, and yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's what kept them up, and I think that this year they're going to struggle big time. I really do.
No, fair play, mate. And for you, Dennis, who's going to finish third from bottom?
I mean, it's a tie break again, and it was a toss-up between 2 teams, or 2 or 3 teams for me. But once again, I'm going to take Bill's side on this and put Wolves down. They have made one big signing. It was a loan player, Cunha. I can't quite pronounce it possibly, but Matheus Cunha, Brazilian guy. They already had agreement in place. They bought him for like 50 million. And I think they've agreed to that, and then panicked, and that's why they're not signing anyone else, because they had an obligation to buy, which is the danger of obligation to buys. But they've sold about £100 million worth of players, and not really replaced them. And that, bringing in one player that may have been all right for you, are going to struggle. I mean, I wrote my list before the news came out, and that's just confounded it really for me. I think Gary O'Neill's a good coach. I think he'll struggle with the side, whereas at least with that Bournemouth side, because I believe he was assistant manager, he was embedded, they knew who he was, or he's part of the coaching team before he took over from Parker. He's not going to have that luxury at Wolves. They're defensively not the worst, and they've got a bloody good goalkeeper, so they got a chance. I think it will be a close run thing, but I do have Wolves in the long run going down because I can see a couple more sales go in before the season starts, or January as well.
Yeah, they've got Super Craig Dawson, so you never know, he might save them. So let's move up slightly above the relegation zone from 17th to 13th now. So Mark, who's just going to escape the drop?
Well, for me, for 17th, I've put Wolves. Obviously, I've kind of already hinted at why I think that Gary O'Neill did a really, really good job last year at Bournemouth. And assuming that he does get the job, I'll lay money on it that somehow Wolves find some money to go and bring in one or two players, even if it's just a loan. Obviously, obviously just mentioned about Craig Dawson there. I'm not sure what's happening with the Aaron Creswell situation, but I would lay money on it that they find some money from down the back of the sofa or something like that
in the piggy bank.
Well, you never know, it could be Monopoly money, who knows these days. I think, as Dennis has just said there as well, so they've got in Patricio a very, very good goalkeeper,
it's Sarr, isn't it?
Sarr, sorry.
You're getting your Portuguese keepers muddled up.
It's Portugal FC though, Wolves. So
well, we've got to sell in them all, haven't they?
yeah, pretty much.
I good goalie. I think obviously Dawson at the back, as we know, and a couple of others there. I think that they'll just about survive. But yeah, goal scoring is clearly going to be their major issue. But I think they'll be just about all right.
Yeah, well, goal scoring for Wolves has been a problem even when they finished 7th twice in a row under Nuno Espirito Santo. So it was definitely a problem last season. Dennis, who's going to just survive for you?
Just exactly the same with the bottom two. I've flipped over on Marks, and I reckon Forest will just stay up. I think they've got a good core of players now with Gibbs White, in my opinion, arguably their best player. And, they've signed a couple of players. They haven't gone too mad this summer. The only asterisk I'll put next to this is because there is some rumours and innuendo. There's going to be some form of investigation into their finances. Could that lead to a points deduction or a transfer embargo in January if they're in a relegation scrap? Who knows? But for me, they just edge Wolves because they don't seem to be, as on fire as Wolves do at the minute.
Yeah, fair dues, mate. So for me, for 17th is Everton. So again, it's going to be another tough season for Everton. With Mashiri obviously spunking all their money. They barely got any money to spend. Like you said, with Wolves, Mark, back of the sofa. Do you know what I mean? So they've only brought in Ashley Young, but good player Ashley Young, but how old is he? 37, 38, not exactly for the future. They've got Dan Juma on the loan again. Look, a good signing on loan from Villarreal, but like previously, they need Dominic Calvert-Lewin to stay fit, but he's like Andy Carroll with his injury record last couple of seasons. So, but look, with Sean Dyche in charge, they've got a great chance to stay up again. But it wouldn't be a great surprise if they have to, escape out on the last day again at Goodison Park like they did against Bournemouth on the last day of the previous season. So, there's obviously still discontent amongst the fans. Obviously, we've got Mashiri, Bill Kenwright is still there. I know they've had like Denise Barrett-Baxendale and Graham Sharp have left the board, but there's still discontent between the owners and obviously the fans. And and Everton's squad isn't that great. Obviously, last couple of seasons have proved that. So, and it hasn't improved that much. So, again, they'll probably be a club that's going to be pretty active in the last couple of weeks of the transfer window if they can even just get maybe another player on loan or whatever. But I think they'll just survive by the skin of their teeth. If they had a different manager, I think I would actually have Everton down, but because they've got Sean Dyche, I think they'll just stay up again. So let's move on to 16th. Who have you got, Dennis, for 16th?
Seems like mirroring each other, but Everton 16th purely because I think Dyche's managerial nous will get them further up. The only thing that maybe will hold them back again, like you said, is transfers. They haven't really brought anyone in. They haven't lost anyone other than Yerry Mina, from my understanding, that was a first-team player, because Keane had been out on loan forever and a day, because that was a frankly bizarre signing. And like they've released a couple of fringe players. But they brought in young, good, experienced player, well past his best. Wouldn't expect him to be starting every game. And Danjuma, bit of a wild card. Hopefully for their sake, plays better than he did for Spurs. But I just see the tactical now. So he's got that. He's got Tarkowski. He's got Keane. At centre back, which are just are his boys from Burnley. They've got Decore in the middle, who is a real spark plug.
Kept them up basically.
Yeah. And Onana got a second season, bit prem experience behind him now, David Moyes. So that's what you need. I reckon they've got a good little core, similar to what Forest, but slightly better than that. And I think Dyche's managerial now edges them ahead of Wolves and Forest.
Yeah, totally. And I think I forgot to say this when I said Everton for 70, but hopefully towards the end of the season we'll see Dele Alli back in the Everton team. And so obviously, I'm sure we've all seen the emotional interview he gave with Gary Neville on the overlap, which is absolutely heartbreaking to watch and listen to his story. But hopefully, if he could get himself fit, because he's injured at the moment, then he might be a new signing, like potential sort of new signing for them. So we'll see how it goes with Dele Alli. So for 16th, again, obviously the positions, they're so similar in terms of the clubs. So I've got Nottingham Forest for 16th. So I expect them to stay exactly where they were from last season. And I think they will stay up, considering the quality up front. We've mentioned a couple of players already. Awoniyi, Brennan Johnson, Morgan Gibbs-White. That's a pretty good front three for a bottom half team. Needs to improve their all-four away record. As you said, Mark, they've got 8 points. Absolutely shocking, but also their home form was brilliant. So, but I expect them to improve their away form this season, and they need to get a goalkeeper. Been linked with Dean Henderson again, so if they could get him, that'd be obviously great. And yeah, I think if they had a different manager, then I'd probably fear for them a little bit still. But Steve Cooper, as he proved last season, is a good manager, so I expect them to sort of stay where they are, but have a bit more of a slightly comfortable, slightly more comfortable season anyway this time round. So, Mark, who you got for 16th?
I've put Everton in 16th, just really for basically the same reasons that you guys have said. I think it's Sean Dyche really more than anything else. Obviously, you've got to be majorly worried if you are an Everton fan, I think, with how far they have fallen over the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons. Really worrying. I think the key is going to be, if they keep Calvert-Lewin fit for a period of time, then I think that they could potentially finish a little bit higher than 16th. But I haven't got a crystal ball, so I obviously don't know that. And also as well, and I was waiting for someone to mention him. Obviously, you did mention him there, Bill. Obviously, Dele Alli. I know obviously he's got the off-field problems, obviously that you touched upon. I know he's obviously just had surgery as well, hasn't he, on an injury? So fingers crossed for him that he can come back and play, because I think that's probably the one thing that he would bring to Everton. If you're looking at the team, we've got effectively the same 6 teams, I think, in effect there in that relegation battle. He's probably the one player that brings something a little bit different to those other teams in terms of his ability to go and score goals and obviously to create stuff if he can get back to something like his best. And I think that would give them, especially as well with Calvert-Lewin's fit, I think that actually gives them a good edge over the other teams. But if that doesn't happen, then they're going to be looking back over their shoulders. I think really worried. I think about their status and their future, and obviously moving into a new ground in the next, about 18 months' time or so. And I was reading earlier that's behind schedule. So I mean, the last thing they want is to end up in a 60,000 seater stadium in the Championship.
Totally. Yeah, no, good points, Mark. And obviously, it's not all about football for any footballers. Obviously, their well-being, and obviously we wish Dele Alli all the best, and hopefully he can get back to playing anywhere near what he's capable of. He's still young enough. So for 15th, I've gone for Bournemouth. So when they sacked Gary O'Neill early in the year, I thought it was incredibly harsh. Still think it is, but with the new manager, Adriani Areola, I think I'm going to say. I think he sounds a really exciting manager. He's another disciple of Marcelo Bielsa. From what I've read, on a modest budget, did wonders at Real Vallecano. So yeah, it's probably be a high aggressive, intense playing style, which suited Bournemouth down to the ground under Eddie Howe, and I'm sure it will be a similar thing this season. Having David Brooks fit and available would be like a new signing. He's, I think, done well in pre-season by the sound of it, so it's great to see him get over his long-term illness. And one of the signings that really stood out for me, who's been linked with the Prem for a few years, not so much a wonder kid, but someone who's highly rated, is Justin Kluivert. So he's signed for Bournemouth this season, so he could be a real game changer for them potentially this season. But so I've got Bournemouth for 15th for me. So Dennis, who are you gone for?
Oh, I've gone a little left field for 15th in that there's always one team that surprises you, that does really well one year and then slumps down. And for me, 15th is Fulham.
Oh yeah,
Fulham. I reckon that Mitrovic, he wants out to Saudi by the sounds of it, and I think he said he'd never play for them again. That's their main goal scorer gone. There's also talk of Willian going to Saudi. They haven't really sold anyone, and I think they've spent a wee bit. And maybe they were banking on us paying over the odds for Paulina, but he's now injured. I don't know how long he's out for. But he said it was a shoulder injury at least to start the season. So I reckon they'll fall off. I don't think they'll ever be in trouble of relegation. I think they'll be that team that gets sucked in towards the end. The teams that are pulling away jump above them, similar to like how Palace did this year. For me, Fulham are finishing 15th, and also you got the Marco Silva factor. He could implode at any minute. It's a fact.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, Mark.
For me, in 15th, I've gone for Bournemouth. I'm sort of quite intrigued to see how this chaotic brand of football that the new manager is going to bring in. To be honest with you, as you're just saying, they're a Bielsa disciple. So looking forward to that. But again, I just sort of like feel that even though they've spent some decent money, I do just kind of like feel defensively they do always, and it's a tradition that goes back to Eddie Howe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just always look to take it back. Yeah, it is really. I mean, you don't have to look at us last year. West Ham going, what was it, 25% of the possession, and we knocked 4 past them.
Yeah.
And from that point of view, I do worry about them. And I'm not overly convinced either about the big lad up front, Solanke either. Whether or not if he's really Premier League quality, he did better than previous years, and I feel that means that they're going to struggle, despite obviously, as you've just mentioned, Kluivert coming in. They've got Milios as well, the left back. Obviously, they've just signed from as we know pretty well. But yeah, I think I think they'll be comfortable, but I don't think they're going to be, looking in that mid-table. I think they're just going to sit, with nothing to play for in those last sort of 5 or 6 games of the season.
No, absolutely. So let's move up to 14th. So back to you, Mark. Who have you got for 14th?
I've actually gone for Fulham in 14th. I just kind of like feel, again, as I was saying earlier about Forest, that there's normally always a team that does, new team coming up. They normally have a team does really, really well, like Fulham did obviously like last year. And in the second season, they do then generally struggle a little bit. Obviously, as we know, when Mitrovic played last year, Fulham looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
When he didn't play, they looked awful. They didn't look like they was ever going to score a goal, in my view. The fact as well that they've gone and signed Jimenez from Wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a very, very good player up until we got that horrible head injury. He hasn't quite been the same player since. And obviously Mitrovic has said that he wants to leave, and I don't think he hasn't gone yet, but you would assume that that's going to happen, or his heart's certainly not in it. And all right, they've signed a good lad at the Calvin Bassey, obviously the centre half. But yeah, for me, I feel that they're going to struggle, and I don't think they've got the goals either in their team. Again, a bit like we're saying about Bournemouth, to necessarily impact at the top end of the season. Top end of the league. Sorry.
Yeah, fair enough. And you, Dennis?
Sorry, 1 second. I've lost my place on my list. Just want to make sure that I get this totally correct.
Get the up-to-date list up, mate.
Burnley. Yeah. No. 14th, Burnley. I've got.
Yeah.
I think they'll be the team that they may be in trouble in parts, but if they are in trouble, then Uncle Pep will help them out in January with a couple of loans, in my opinion. So I reckon because of that, they'll be that team that potentially pips Fulham to a slightly more respectable position. But I see them, Company, yeah, he's done well. And people say, oh, he hasn't done it in the Prem, but he was managing right at the top and in Europe for when he was manager of Anderlecht. So he's been in high pressure games. I don't know if he won the league over there. I can't actually recall.
No, I don't think he did.
But but there would be a team that's fighting for the championship and almost certainly in European competitions. So he has got more pedigree than just your standard former star that's been thrust into a championship club, like when Lampard did it, or like when Gerrard went to Rangers and then came to the Prem. So I think he has a bit more nous about him. However, I don't see them. Some people are talking about a top half finish because of his brand of football and stuff. I'm not having it. I reckon they will be in the mix of relegation, but be comfortable with a few games to go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've got the same, Dennis. I've gone for Burnley. They're by far the most likely of the three promoted clubs to stay up. As I mentioned earlier, Sander Berg is going to probably join from Sheffield United. That's a good midfield signing. They've signed other Premier League experience in Nathan Redmond and Michael Obafemi, who was at Southampton. James Trafford, the goalkeeper, has joined. He had a brilliant under-21s with England in the summer. Didn't concede a goal in the whole tournament. And that added with Vincent Kompany's style of play at Burnley. They absolutely pissed the Championship, didn't they, last season? So, and there's always seems to be one team that always stands out above the other relegated side, newly promoted side. So, so I've got Burnley for 14th. I think they will surprise quite a few teams this coming season. So, let's move up to 13th. So, Dennis, who you got for 13th?
13th, I've got a team that has already been spoken about, Bournemouth. Purely, I think the industrious signings they've made, and they've got a left back that I think we should have signed in Milos Kerkez. I think that's, he's a set piece specialist as well, so he'll be taking their corners and free kicks. I know that we mentioned their crazy brand of football. That's probably the only thing keeping them in this sort of nearly relegated mix. For me, I think they're going to have enough about them and they'll improve a little bit on last season. They'll again be in the relegation scrap, but like Burnley, they will push on in that last, sort of crazy period around Easter and be clear of relegation with a few games to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair dues, mate. So, if I've got Crystal Palace, obviously losing club legend Wolf Sahar is a blow, but, Roy Hodgson's at the helm, he's at the wheel again, and play some sort of not anti-Hodgson, but like unlike Hodgson sort of football towards the end of last season. They blew teams away, like Leeds 5-1 and etc. But having fair players like Eze and Elise will obviously be key again this season. And good defenders at the back, Joachim Anderson and Mike Guehi, two of the best centre backs outside the top 6 or 7, in my opinion. So if they keep all them and check Decore in the midfield, if they keep all of them, I think there'll be a relatively comfortable season. But if any of them go, there could be a team that slip this season. But Jefferson Lerma on the free from Bournemouth, that's an astute signing. He's got real good Premier League experience, got high energy as well. So, which I think suits Palace's sort of squad really with the energy they've got in around the pitch. So so I've got Palace at 13th. So Mark.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you for 13th. I've gone Palace as well. Always tough to play against, especially at Selhurst Park, as we all know. It'll be interesting. Just listening to you there about Uncle Roy with his brand of football at the end of the season there. And I was, because obviously he only went in there, didn't he, for the last, 10 games or 15 games, whatever it was left of the season. And I sort of thought to myself, because it was so what we know, what Hodgson has done, was it just basically like, well, it don't really matter because I'm retired. I'm not carrying on after this season. That is it. And I'm just going to go out there and just, I wouldn't say let the players do what they want to do, but, kind of like express themselves and not put
take the handbrake off.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas I sort of like feel this year that he's going to revert a little bit more back to type. And that for me is, and especially with, obviously, as you said, with Zaha going as well, I just feel that just stops them for me for maybe breaking into that, building on that momentum and getting into sort of that, or challenging at the very least for like a top 10 place. But I do like the signing of Lerma, even if it's their only mate, it's their only real incoming.
Yeah.
I think that's a good signing and boosts an important area of the pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And stick with you, Mark. So who you got for 12th?
This is the highest of the promoted teams for me. I'm going to put Burnley in there. Managed to watch a few of their games last year, and I was really, really impressed. Sort of partly watched them because I was half an interest to see how our boy Cullen would fare in the Championship. I'd be intrigued to see how well he goes this year as well. Really enjoyed how they played. It was quite refreshing as well at times, especially the Championship. Obviously, we all know cut and thrust at times. I think they'll be absolutely fine. I think they've signed well, and I think as Dennis said, I think if they are struggling, come January, then I think that they might get a couple of players on loan from Pep and Man City as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward actually to seeing how they fare in the league this year.
Yeah,
no, absolutely, mate. And Dennis, who you got for 12th?
I've got Palace with Uncle Roy. Everything on this list moving upwards, there's variables and tightness between 11. I could have put them 11th or 12th, but I took it down as they've lost their absolute talisman in Wilf Zaha. I don't think many fans will properly appreciate that, and they've also lost Luka Milivojevic, another, I assume, big personality in the dressing room. Yeah, they got Lerma in to replace Milivojevic effectively, and they've signed this, what looks like an exciting young Brazilian player who need time to adapt. But it's mainly, they'll go for safety first. They were in the mire with Vieira. I think this is keep them up for another year. Hodgson's not going to stay there for a second full season. There's no way he'd do that. He might even go this season at some point if they're looking safe and hand it over to a assistant manager or coach. And then build for the next year. But I reckon they'll finish a comfortable self. They'll have the most Crystal Palace season of all Crystal Palace seasons, where they just exist there. They'll never be there, with the exception of, unless I don't know what their fixture list is. But they got like City, Arsenal, and United the first 3 games. Then they might be bottom, but I reckon they won't be any lower than 14th and any higher than 9th at any point this season. They'll just be there. And they'll finish 12th.
The Eagles will fly, but not fly too high.
They won't soar. They
won't soar. No, definitely not. So for 12th, I've got a team you guys have mentioned earlier, Fulham. I've banked on them actually keeping Mitrovic. So if they do, I think they'll have another solid enough season. But obviously, if he goes, then that trouble might be ahead. As you guys, they signed Raul Jimenez, but obviously he hasn't been the same player, sadly, since his head injury. But new lease of life at a different club, new area. You never know. But yeah, quiet transfer window, but it's more about keeping hold of their good players. So say Mitrovic, Paulinho, Pereira had a really good season for Man United. Tete and Robinson are good fullbacks. Reed's pretty underrated in midfield. Harry Wilson. So it's a shame they couldn't really keep hold of Willian. He played really well for them last season. But with Marco Silva at the helm, I think he did really well last season with. I think they really overachieved with the squad they had to get in the top half. So I think 12th is probably about right for Fulham's squad at the moment if they keep obviously all their players. So a steady season, which still hope for. No second season syndrome, hopefully for them. So moving up to 11th is our team, West Ham. I've gone for. So obviously we expectedly sold Declan Rice in the summer to Arsenal. As of yet, haven't actually made any senior signings, albeit we should expect the incoming signing of Edson Alvarez for 35 million from Ajax. Was messaging James Rowe, mate I know, who's a Dutch journalist based in Amsterdam, and he said it'd be a really good signing for you, really good player, good age, really wants to come here, so that'd be great. And obviously we've been linked with a whole host of Premier League players, Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, and Conor Gallagher, just to name 3. Obviously losing Declan, as we know, is a big blow, but there's still a lot of quality of West Ham's squad, as we know. Zuma and Aguerd are two of the best centre backs outside the top 6 or 7. Lucas Paqueta was fantastic towards the end of the season. Bowen and Ben Rama out wide are good, obviously. I think you never know. We could push for a top half finish, but I mean, obviously, we way underperforming in the Premier League last season, so I think 11th is probably about right for us, and I'll certainly take. But yeah, you never know if we could get a few more signings, even a couple on loan towards the end of the window. I expect us to be one of the busiest sides. Well, hopefully we will be anyway. We could, possibly sneak into the top half with a couple of clubs might drop down for different reasons, which we'll probably come on to. So, hopefully more of a steady season for West Ham this season. So, Mark, who gone for 11th?
Yeah, exactly the same as you. I must admit, until obviously we put in the offers for Maguire and McTominay and Alvarez, obviously that's been accepted, as you just said. I did actually have us finishing about 2 or 3 places lower than this. But that has just given me more cause for optimism that we can, have a better season. We're not going to reach the heights, I don't think, of the, the 2 seasons we had to qualify for Europe in the first place. No. But I think this year that if we were to get there with a view of maybe with an outside chance, maybe getting into that sort of 10th or 9th spot, then I think that would be, for me, would be considered progress for the league. And as I say, that does give me the new signings does give me a bit of cause for optimism that we can actually have a half decent season.
Yeah, totally. And you, Dennis?
Ding, 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 bingo.
We've done it.
We agreed.
That's it. Let's end the video now.
All of us. Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but I'll be honest with you, I've mentally checked out of most of the transfer stuff now. I read it and just go, yep. Don't get me wrong, I'm having a bit of fun with United fans at the minute who have told me for years that Declan Rice is only worth 60 million and we should accept that by telling them that McMayonnaise is only worth about 20 million and that's all we'll pay. And I call them that because of a stupid McSauce nickname for him. But I think that even without those signings, I think with the team we got now, I think we're pretty capable of staying up, definitely. We got a tricky fixture patch. Wonder if the Sullivan pushes his emergency eject button, which he rarely does fire managers. But so I think Moyes is pretty much safe unless catastrophe. And I reckon with that stability, I reckon there'll be some rocky moments, but it'll be very similar to this one. Just there's going to be a lot. The teams below us have gotten significantly weaker compared to last season. So I reckon 11th. I don't really envision a top half finish unless certain teams fall off a cliff. And 11th place in an FA Cup and Europa League win, Champions League football next season. Thank you very much.
I'll take that in a heartbeat, mate. So right, let's move into the top half. So Mark, who got to finish 10th?
I've gone for Brentford. I like what Thomas Frank has done there. He's obviously got the players playing for each other. They haven't really got any big names. Obviously, their home forms, we've seen they've turned over some, really impressive, big teams, over the last, since they've got back into the league. Obviously, Ivan Toney being suspended for several more months is obviously a big blow for them. But I think actually him coming back will be the catalyst. I think they might struggle a little bit in the first half of the season, but I think once he does come back from his suspension, I think that's going to make a big difference, and I think that will see them pick up more points, obviously score more goals, etc., and get them in that sort of top half. I'm quite intrigued as well to see the young kid that they've signed from Freiburg, the right winger. He's good, coming with a big reputation, and I think that will probably soften the blow. I know he's not a centre forward, but I think that will probably soften the blow a little bit as well of not having Toney around. But they're a difficult team to play against, difficult to break down, and I think that they'll have another solid season, I think.
Yeah, bang on, Mark. I've gone for Brentford as well. Obviously,
Thanks,
obviously Ivan Toney is a big blow, but and David Raya as well, the goalkeeper. I think he's good with Arsenal.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to go. But even so, I think their business looks pretty good. They've also signed Nathan Collins from Wolves. That he's he's good defender for a decent fee as well. The two guys from Freiburg, Flacken and Schade. But just looking for their squads, they've still got like Ricker Henry, Visser, Ben Mee, very underrated player. In Buemo as well. So they've still got some really, Damsgaard in midfield is a very good player. So they've got plenty of good quality throughout their team, really well organised. And big fan like you, Mark, of Thomas Frank. So I think they'll just hang on to a top half finish. But even if they're a couple places below that, it's still size of Brentford. That's still a phenomenal achievement, I've got to say. The budget, etc. Dennis, who you got for 10th?
I mean, 8th to 10th was a really tough one. Any three of the teams I've got there can interchange with each other. But that being said, ding, 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 Brentford!
We're on a roll, lads!
Very, very similar thing to what you've said about, I reckon they will miss Tony initially. Schade isn't an out-and-out centre forward, but he's a bloody good winger. And I think they're going to put Buemo more central, which is why I've put him in my fantasy team. But I reckon there will be bits where they are flirting around the 11th to 12th part. And the one wild prediction out there I'm going to make about Brentford is that if a bigger club were to get rid of their manager, Thomas Frank might leave Brentford for a bigger opportunity by then. Because if a good opportunity comes at a bigger club, which I reckon might lose their manager, we'll come on to later. Who knows? Maybe Thomas Frank might be tempted to go to a club where he's going to have that huge budget, but bring his recruitment to that. That might happen this year. I reckon he's getting to the stage where he's outgrowing Brentford a little bit, personally. Controversial. Brentford fans are going to be hating me like when I said about Ben Rama in the comments, but that's my opinion. But they'll be finishing 10th, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We'll stick with you, Dennis. Who you got for 9th?
9th, again, totally interchangeable. Brighton, I've got there. They brought in João Pedro, who is elite in the Championship, might have a bit of time to adjust, but he'll get them goals. I think, if they might even keep hold of Caicedo, who knows? But they've lost McAllister. I can't, off the top of my head, remember if they brought in a player to replace McAllister, but I reckon that's why they dropped down just a little bit. But I reckon Brighton will do very well in Europe. I reckon they'll reach the later stages of the Europa League this year and might look to prioritise that. Not going to say they're going to win because we're going to win. And they'll go out in the semis so we don't have to play them. But I reckon Brighton will surprise a few people in the Europa League this year. And I think that then their squad might be picked apart a little bit more. But I reckon 9th, simply for what the reasons I said on transfers and that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dennis. I got Brighton for 9th. So I think the Europa League will harm their season a little bit. Traditionally, if you're in the Europa League, you will drop a couple of places in your domestic league. That's throughout Europe. That's been a tradition. McAllister has been the only major sale so far. Got a good fee for him. Obviously, Caicedo has been heavily linked with Chelsea. And he might well go. But they made some decent business in the summer so far. João Pedro, as you said, Dennis. James Milner on the free from Liverpool brings vital experience. And he's also versatile as well. Still a really good player for his age. Obviously, De Zerbi's a top quality manager, as we've seen last season. So, and I agree, Dennis. I think Brighton, if that was depending on their draw in the group stage, they could get out of it. The way they play, keep the ball off, and they could go quite deep in their competition. So, still 9th for, again, some of the Brentford, 9th in the Premier League for their fan base, and the size of the club is still a phenomenal achievement. So, Mark, have you? Is this going to be a three-peat when we get the same three?
No pressure. Can we have a drum roll, please? No, I'm exactly the same. I've
ding, ding, ding.
I think everyone we're all in agreement. They play really, really great football, and they just they do it every single year. They just seem to find players for not big money, and then they they turn them into to top quality players. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them, not just how their season goes, but also as well just from game to game. Their style of football, because I think it is generally really, really enjoyable to watch. It'll be interesting, I think, to see how they cope with the Europa, and that's why for me I've put them in ninth, because I just feel that trying to cope with that extra demand, especially with all due respect to them, obviously that's their first ever European campaign as well. So they haven't got anything to fall back on in terms of how do we cope, But I think they'll have a very good season. I'm looking forward to seeing the lad Ferguson up front as well this year. I think he'll get more of more regular game time this year, I think.
Yeah, totally. And it'd be interesting to see how Matoma can he follow up last season as well.
Yeah, needs to improve his finishing though.
All right, so for eighth now, I'm going to go with Tottenham. James Maddison is a really top signing, and obviously there's been constant rumours and bids from Bayern Munich for Harry Kane. Interesting to see whether he stays or goes, but he scored 30 Premier League goals last year, which is phenomenal for a team that finished eighth. So just shows how average the rest of the players are there. They were last season anyway. They've signed Vicario, the goalkeeper. I think he's probably going to replace Hugo Lloris, which isn't a bad thing, because Lloris has been mediocre for a few years now. Bit of a calamity James in goal really last couple of years. So there'll be certainly more attacking this season under Ange Postecoglou. So it'll be back to more attacking style that they've haven't had since Mauricio Pochettino was in charge. So that was a fair while ago now. I think they've signed a couple of defenders, but are they of the top quality? Well, obviously we'll find out, because their defence last season Tottenham was absolutely awful. So hence why they finished eighth and were nowhere near the Champions League places in the end. So I just Tottenham's a hard one to pick, because if like Son gets back to his best form, if Kane stays, then you just never know. And obviously Bentancur's a good midfielder. So, but yeah, I think there's just and obviously Maddison, as we know, is a really good player. But there's just too many questions around Tottenham for them for me, even if just to get qualified for the Europa League, will be a bit of an achievement for them really this season. So yeah, I've got Tottenham for eighth. Who have you got for eighth then, Mark?
I've gone Villa. I like the business that they've done this year. Obviously, Tielemans coming in, the Spanish centre half that they signed, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
Torres.
Pau Torres.
That's the one. So, and obviously, what their turnaround last year, when from when Gerrard left, obviously to Emery taking over. I mean, that was just fantastic, really. I mean, what a turnaround from where they were. But the reasons that I gave for Brighton, it will be interesting to see how they cope with that Thursday to Sunday, game time, and that's why I've put them where I have. And also as well, I just sort of feel that they are probably only just one injury away from potentially having a bit of a disaster up front. If Ollie Watkins gets injured, then they are in banging trouble, I think. Because I'm not sure who else they've actually got as an out-and-out centre forward, a target man, whatever you want to call him in this day and age. So that for me would be a little bit of a concern. But I mean, I think he's generally got quite a good injury record, so I'm sure that they'll be fine. And I think that eighth is probably about right for Villa, I think, at the minute.
Yeah, fair enough. And Dennis, who you got for eighth place?
I got Villa as well. It was a real toss-up between my seventh and eighth place. Got Villa. And when I explain who I've got seventh, it will become clear why I've put Villa in this position. But, signing of Moussa Diarmi and Pau Torres are brilliant signals of intent. I think they'll go very far in the Conference League. Obviously, I want us to be the only English winners, naturally. But I had a little look before coming on, and at the minute, the only other teams in the qualifying round that even pose a threat, really, Frankfurt and Fiorentina, which will give them a good game. But I think with Villa's side, they're on their day, as we've proven, they're capable of winning it. The transfer window's still going on. They could get another centre forward in. I'm with Mark, though. I don't really actually know any strikers. They've got a young lad called Davis that was on loan at Watford last year, and he wasn't even Watford's first choice centre forward. Says it all. So other than that, I couldn't name you a Villa striker. But yeah, I reckon they're going to finish 8th, but they're going to do solid well. There's not an awful lot between 8th and 10th, in my opinion, and or 7th and 10th really when we come onto it. But yeah, I'm with Mark on that.
Yeah, fair dues. Right, let's move on to 7th to 1st now. So, Mark, who you got for 7th?
Who have I got here? I've got Tottenham for 7th. I like the signing of Maddison, obviously, as you touched upon, and I don't believe that Son will be as inconsistent as what he was last year. Obviously, time will tell whether or not the defenders, obviously, as you've said, that they've signed, are they of the required quality? I think it's probably fair to say that Tottenham managers in the last couple of years have probably had a bit of a blind spot to signing top quality defenders. I think that's fair to say. Obviously, their whole season again is going to depend on whether or not if Harry Kane goes. Personally, I think if he's serious about winning something, I think he should go. I mean, admittedly, to be fair, I think going to Bayern Munich is a bit of a farmers' league, isn't it, to a degree? Because, well, it's virtually nailed on, isn't it? I mean, Dortmund should have won that last year and messed it up at the end, bottled it. A bit like Arsenal.
Bit like Arsenal, isn't it?
But that's obviously we're not doing the Bundesliga prediction show.
No, that's next week.
I can't pronounce the players in this league. I don't know where else. That's why I just call them by their country name instead. It's easier. No, I think that obviously they had a very disappointing season last year from their perspective. Their other players clearly have got to step up because you can't keep relying on Harry Kane, and even more so if he goes. So I don't think they're going to get Champions League, and I think they're going to have to find out. They're going to have to go into the competition if they want to get back into Europe. For the following season, they are going to have to go through the conference qualifying playoffs. I think that's going to be their best hope to getting back into it. But then again, I feel if Kane goes, then I think that could mean that they're going to be in for a tougher season, and 7th could probably change, I think.
Yeah, fair points, mate. So the 7th, I've got Villa, like you guys have mentioned Villa earlier. It should be an exciting season with Villa. Obviously, they've got Unai Emery, who's a fantastic coach. He's proven it over the years. And yeah, they've had a good window, as you boys have said, with Torres, Diaby, and Yuri Tillemans. Know what he's done at Leicester. Maybe not last season, but he's proven to be a high-quality Premier League player. So to get him on a free is a brilliant piece of business. So
I wish we'd gone for him. Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, but I think a few other clubs probably say the same as well. Can Ollie Watkins replicate last season's form? I think he can. Needs some help though, as you boys have said. Don't really have a lot of natural centre forwards. Got plenty of attacking talent. They're just looking for their team. Buendia, Ramsey, Jacob Ramsey. Even at the back, got good defenders. Cash, Douglas Luiz is very good in midfield. Mings, Martinez, the goalie. Just stacked of quality, and I say a top quality manager as well. So, they should. I agree with you, boys. I think they'll go deep, and they probably, like West Ham were last season, probably favourites for the Conference League, judging by the manager and also their squad. They should really go on and win it, or at least get to the semis anyway. And I think I don't see them really impacting their league form, because I think they'll stay roughly where they were certainly second half of last season anyway. So it should be good times back at Villa Park, which is really good to see. So, Dennis, who you got for 7th?
I promise you, I've not copied Mark's homework.
Here's what I made earlier.
There's a differential here, because obviously it's a bit of a toss-off, and I'm doing it on what is in front of me. It's whether they sell Kane or not for me, because his goals will nod them through above everyone else. I think there's going to be an embedding in period. They have signed some good players. And one thing I will say that might anger some Spurs fans in this is that, I understand why you don't like Daniel Levy. I do. West Ham with David Sullivan. Totally get it. On board with Levy out. But you spent 200 million this summer. Just because it was a loan and you forgot the fee. They spent 30 million on Kulisevic. They spent 40 million on Pedro Porro. They've just spent 40 million on Mickey van der Ven, who is a bloody good centre-back by the looks of things. And they could have maybe broken their curse a little bit. It reminds me a lot of Vertonghen. And you spent nearly 50 million on Maddison. So he has spent money. It's just a lot of it has been arranged in the season before. And he's got to balance the books. So I think he's holding out for about 120 million for Kane. Whether he goes or not, I don't know. And if he doesn't go, I reckon you guys finish 7th. I really want... I'm not going to try and butcher the pronunciation, so I'm just going to call him Ange, which is his first name, or Ange. I really want him to do well. He strikes me as a really honest bloke and is really refreshing in interviews. Yeah. But I do worry that it's going to be the same carousel of Tottenham where it looks like you might not get Europe, he gets fired, and that's where maybe you try and get a Thomas Frank in, which I think it'd be a bit silly to leave Brentford. But you never know, he might be tempted because he had offers before. I think there was talk of him potentially going Chelsea. And that's what I'm thinking, that my only managerial concern is he doesn't get enough time, because I reckon he'll be a good coach for Spurs. He just needs a couple of years to stamp his print on the club. But yeah, I reckon Manor Solomon is a really underrated signing on a free transfer as well, I'll just add. I think he's a good bit of business, that. But yeah, Spurs for 7th. And I don't think Kane will go. But
yeah, good points. We'll see how it goes. So let's go into 6th place. So I've got Chelsea, which will obviously be a huge improvement on the shit show that they stank the place out with last season. So yeah, big changes again this summer in terms of signings and outgoings. Probably more importantly, they had a ridiculously bloated squad. Christopher Nkunku from RB Leipzig, over 50 million pounds. Looks to be a good sign. It's been announced he's going to be out for probably about 4 months now. So, like, the curse of Chelsea strikers strikes again. But they've also signed Nicholas Jackson from Villarreal, Dizazi from Monaco. Hopefully, it won't be a disaster. Sanchez, Robert Sanchez from Brighton, the goalie. So, I'll be interested to see if it's going to be Kepa Arrizabalaga or Sanchez is going to be the number 1 for Chelsea this season. It's also, obviously you've got Richard Pochettino, obviously a fabulous coach, as we've seen over the years. Can he get the best out of, Raheem Sterling and Mudryk, who are already at the club? And probably more importantly for Chelsea, can Reece James and Ben Chilwell stay fit for the whole season? That's been a real Achilles heel for the previous million Chelsea coaches they've been over the last few years. So if they stay fit, obviously they're two of the best fullbacks in the league, in my opinion. So I think they'll just probably miss out on maybe Champions League this season, but it'd be it won't be hard for it to be a much better season than last season anyway. So I've got Chelsea for 6th. So Mark,
I've gone for Newcastle in 6th. Just really because obviously with them going back into the Champions League, obviously expectations after last year I think have probably skyrocketed up there now. And it would just be interesting to see how they cope with the demands of Champions League. I like who they've signed. Obviously, Harvey Barnes. Obviously, we know very well. And again, as we mentioned about Tielemans, he's a player that I know we were linked with him at the very, very beginning of the window. I wish we'd signed him at West Ham. I really, really do. Obviously, I don't know too much about Sandro Tonali. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name.
Tonali.
Tonali. Thank you. He's obviously got a big reputation. So I think he's obviously, from what I've read, I think that Newcastle probably got probably going to have a new fan's favourite. Obviously, I know that they love Bruno up there, didn't they? But I think he's going to take that role over. And again, I think it will be nice, as they did last year. I think it will be quite nice actually to see Newcastle, mixing it up a little bit, and in terms of ruining the Sky's so-called Big Six, set up. So I think that's really, really good. And obviously they've just signed the lad from Southampton, haven't they? The fullback. I don't think he's going to play too much.
Livramento.
Yeah, thank you.
Always happy to help, mate.
Tino. I don't think he's going to play too much because of Trippier. But again, another good signing, I think, really. But what I will say, what must Harrison Ash be thinking?
Yeah, true, mate. So Dennis, definitely. So Dennis, who you got for 6th?
Oh, I'm going to set the cat amongst the pigeons. And also, we have 3 different teams for once.
Wow.
I'm going to go for Liverpool here.
Oof.
And I know there's going to be one Liverpool fan that's going to be
where's the fishing?
But there is a good...
Rein him in, Dennis.
But there is a very logical reason for this.
Yeah.
I want to stress, it's for me, 3rd down to 6th is tight as anything for me between them.
No,
but they've lost Fabinho, they've lost Milner, they've lost Firmino up top, and as much as I love winding up a certain Liverpool fan about it, they have lost their captain in Henderson.
Yeah.
They brought in Alexis McAllister, great player, not necessarily a leader. They brought in Szoboszlai, my boy, great player, love him. He's going to be taking all your corners. But again, leadership, nada. You're lacking leadership. You got Van Dijk and to a lesser extent Mohamed Salah in your team, and maybe Robertson for leadership. I reckon there's gonna be a bit of a transition season unless they can bring in someone. They're looking at Lavia from Southampton again. That doesn't scream leadership. They've lost a lot of leadership, specifically in the middle of the park. I reckon that's gonna be the difference between those 5 points they're probably gonna need between 6th and 4th for me. So that's why I'm put Liverpool are the bottom of that pack for me for that reason alone.
Yeah, that's good. No, you're right, mate. He's going to be very tight. So, keep with you, Dennis. So, who you got in the 5th place?
Well, I've got Newcastle in 5th. They're just edged out for the logic of they've got to cope with the Champions League football. Tonali is a brilliant signing for them. Really, real statement of intent for me. Depending on who they then splash the cash out on later. You know, their funds are pretty much crazy. I'm not the one name I can never pronounce in football, but that Georgian winger at Napoli, the begins with a K and it's Alalia and all that. Yeah. There's like my housemate's a Newcastle fan is saying that there's loads of talk about that. If they get that guy in, along with Barnes on each wing, that's insane. Yeah. I reckon Isak's going to have a great second season now. He's had a season to adapt. There might be a bit of a drop off on Trippier as he gets a bit older, but they've got Livramento to come in, who's a very good right back, not quite on the same level. I reckon they'll be comfortable. I think the added European football is the only reason they don't get the top 4 for me this year. They finish 5th.
Yeah, I've got Newcastle 5th as well, mate. I think the Champions League, obviously games, and the Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday will impact them slightly, and then obviously Eddie Howe's high intensity football as well. They haven't obviously made a load of signings or no marquee signings, but I think they're probably doing the right thing. Really, if you're Harvey Barnes, proven Premier League player, got 13 goals in a relegated Leicester side, that's a great effort. Tonali obviously looks a pretty outstanding player. Livramento, good, pretty good backup. And I'm banking on Callum Wilson to have another good season. He had a really good season last season, and I'm banking on Isak to stay fit for most of the season as well, because he only played the 22 league games last season, so and he got 10 goals, so pretty much a goal a game. So I'm expecting him to stay fit for more of the season. If he does, then Newcastle could maybe finish higher than last season. Obviously, had a great defence, and Nick Pope's a good goalkeeper. So they'll be right in the reckoning. They're here to stay, Newcastle. So I've got the Geordies in at 5th. Mark.
I've gone for Chelsea at 5th, just partly because they haven't got anything to concentrate on other than the league, and I think knowing what we've seen before when Pochettino was here, obviously with Southampton and Tottenham, obviously the fitness side of it is obviously a massive factor for him. However, he's only surprisingly only signed a 2-year deal. Which seems a year or two too short in my view. Yeah. So that I think then puts added pressure on him having to win something. Within that 2-year period, it's not going to be. We've heard so many clubs over the years. It's about a project that doesn't shout to me, this is a project. It's almost as if he's got to win something this year. But I think that fifth, obviously, as we all know, the problems that they had last year, I mean, beyond a joke, really, at the end, 600 million and you finish, 14th or whatever, 13th in the league, whatever it was. I feel that they've invested pretty well in the summer. They've obviously got maybe one or two issues in the centre of the park. But I just feel that the players wanting to play for Pochettino, I think, is a big factor. And not having that European football, I think, as we've seen before with Chelsea, when Conte was the manager, I think will actually galvanise that team. And clearly they're signing a lot of young players as well, which I think will only help Pochettino give them a decent season this year.
Yeah, good points, mate. So let's go into the top four now. So Mark, who have you got for fourth?
I've gone for Liverpool. I totally agree with what Dennis was saying about the leadership thing. I mean, I'm surprised that they've allowed so many central midfield players to leave. Obviously, the ones that Dennis was saying, Milner and Fabinho in particular, seem to be the biggest surprises to me. That they were allowed to go. I like that they've signed McAllister from Brighton. I think he's a really fantastic player, although probably not a Klopp type of player if you look at who he's signed in those midfield positions in the past. I don't believe that Núñez will be as inconsistent or bad, depending on what your viewpoint is, as what he was last year. I think having Diaz back as well, so I think he was a massive loss for them last year because he looked really good when they signed him. When he had that, when he initially came in, and obviously I'm not going to pronounce his name, but Cody, the Dutch lad as well. I was really impressed with him. Gakpo, thank you. When he came in January, he looked really impressive to me. I think they've got enough. They probably still need one more midfield player, I think, just to probably be, just to sort of firm that up, that fourth place for definite. But I think they're going to be fine this year, and I think that Liverpool will more or less have their mojo back. Their form at the back end of last year when they moved, those last sort of 10 games or so, when they moved Trent into that sort of inverted fullback role, I thought was as good as Man City. Really, I really did. So I think they'll be fine this year for top four quite comfortably.
Good stuff, mate. Dennis?
Yep. So I've put fourth. I've put United. I think they've been
practicing that all day in the mirror.
I think their signings are good signings. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But how many times have United signed a goalkeeper from overseas that's had howlers in their first season? I reckon Onana might get rinsed by their own fan base, get like De Gea's first season. This Haaland guy, I mean, there's part of me that thinks they just signed him because of the bloody name. He scored less goals than Gianluca Scamacca last season. I reckon he's talented. He's not going to hit the ground running. So I reckon this is another sort of a second transition season for United. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes and Rashford are going to get them goals. Fernandes is nonsense, as annoying as it is to us, is a benefit to Man United.
Yeah.
I think defensively they're going to be pretty sound, especially if they lose Maguire and he goes somewhere else, potentially, maybe not. But yeah, I just think, they're back in Champions League. They've got some other off-field shenanigans, such as the takeover, which may impact a few things. So I have them finishing a relatively decent fourth. They'll have patches where they look like they might do a title challenge. Like I said before, between third and sixth, I reckon it's going to be really tight. So United slot in fourth in my prediction.
Yeah, fair dues, mate. So, for fourth, I've got Liverpool. So, same as you, Mark. A couple of weeks ago, I had Liverpool as fourth, and I was pretty confident about that. But with the selling of Henderson and Fabinho, I'm a bit unsure on Liverpool now. But as you say, McAllister's a really good signing, and the geezer from Leipzig, Zabosalai, I'm going to say, I might have absolutely butchered that. But
no, you got that right.
Bosh. So but if they don't get a hold of midfielder, that could really cost Liverpool this season because they haven't got anyone to play there at the moment. So obviously they've been linked with Lavia. Again, these are good players. So that Southampton, but he's only like, 19, 20?
Yeah.
It's a lot for a 19, 20-year-old to play every single game or majority of games for a big club in Liverpool. So surely they've eyed up another player as well. Maybe they should go for Caicedo. I don't know, but someone like that would be that'd be great in Liverpool's midfield. But I think I'm banking a bit like you, Mark, on Liverpool's forward line to bail them out of trouble next season. Obviously, they've got Núñez, like you, Mark. I think he will do better next season. He's a good player, but just got to improve his finishing. He's got everything.
Yeah.
He's got all the raw attributes to be a fantastic centre forward, but just improve his one-on-one finishing really. So I expect him to do a bit better. Obviously, you've got Salah, who's world class. He's phenomenal. Jota, he had his injury problems last season. He should be fully fit now. Diaz, again, was out for most of the season. He's a top quality player. Gakpo did pretty well when he joined in January. So that's 5 really good forwards to pick from for Liverpool. I'm banking on them to sort of blow away a few teams next season. So. If they can get a hold of midfielder, I think they'll comfortably get 4th. If they don't, well, they might slip a few places. So let's move up to 3rd. So Dennis, who you got for 3rd?
It's going to set the cat among the pigeons again. I've actually going to punt on Chelsea finishing 3rd.
Oof!
Or
very high.
There's the following thing that sets them apart from the rest, which say it's very tight, but I think again it's that no European football. Last time they were in this situation, they actually blew the league away, coming off the back of a terrible season under Mourinho with a team that shouldn't have been anywhere near down there, like in Mourinho's 3rd season. Now, I'm not saying they're the complete article, but I think Pochettino's going to he's got a bag of snakes effectively, and he's laying them all out flat. In that he's gotten rid of quite a few of the bit of their deadwood with a bit of help from the Saudis. They're actually in profit this window. People talk about their financial fair play. I think I looked on Transfer Market this afternoon. They're in like a 60-70 million pound profit, which is crazy. But the players they've signed are really good, and they've signed 5 first team players this window, whereas last couple of windows has been a bit of a joke, But, Roberto Sanchez, who was brilliant for Brighton, might be their number 1 goalkeeper. That could be a game changer. And the 2 strikers they've signed, Nkunku and Jackson, are really good. There's the young lads from Rennes they signed, Oguchukwu, probably butchered that pronunciation. He looked really good. I watched Rennes in the Europa League last year. I think it was Europa League. It was whatever European competition they were in. And he looked pretty decent for them as a CDM. I reckon that, Pochettino's tactics, the fact that they're going to have hopefully a consistent squad. They've gotten rid of people like Aubameyang, if you've seen the Arsenal All or Nothing, that guy's toxic as hell. I reckon they're going to just about edge the other teams into 3rd. It could be a couple points in it, a couple of goals here and there, but that's my prediction.
Well, I wasn't expecting that prediction, Mark. I'm going for Man United for 3rd. Similar reasons to what you said, Dennis, about them finishing, in a decent position. So Onana, I think he's a really good signing. He suits much more of Erik ten Hag's style of play. Mason Mount, if he can get back to how he played a couple of seasons ago at Chelsea, I think he'd be a great signing. Højlund, probably a star in the future. I think he's really scored more goals at his age than a lot of really good modern day centre forwards. So, and it's actually refreshing to see him actually invest in a young striker rather than going for the likes of Ronaldo and Ibrahimovic and Cavani, Falcao. Do you know what I mean? So nice to actually go for someone a bit younger this time. I just think they're probably a season too early to really challenge for the title, but I think they finished 3rd last season. I think if they can match that, then that's still a good season, especially if they can get another trophy in the bag. So Mark, who you got for 3rd?
Yeah, I'm the same as you, Bill, on this one. I like the players they've signed in the summer. I think that definitely improves their starting 11 because I think that obviously, as we all know, probably over the last couple of years, it's fair to say that there's been players in that starting 11 that probably shouldn't have been there. They're not Manchester United quality players. I think that's fair to say. And I think as well, kind of like what you've said there as well about the signing of Højlund, that they've actually, in general in the summer, they've actually signed younger players rather than signing players that are at the end of their career. Yeah. They're getting players now that are either at the beginning or they're just about to enter their peak years, which is ideal. That's really what you want. They haven't quite got. I think they'll be similar to this year. I think they'll probably get to round about 10, 15 games to go mark, probably 10 is probably a little bit fairer. They'll be in the race. And then I think from that point onwards, 10 games, they'll start to just to drop away again. I think probably another season away from sustaining, anything long term.
Yeah, no, totally agree, mate. Okay, let's move into the runners up. So, like last season, I've gone for Arsenal. They have made a statement this summer with the signings of, obviously Declan Rice, who we mentioned earlier, Kai Havertz, and Julian Timber as well. And I think they will run Man City close again. The gap's certainly closer than I don't know what was close last season. I think it's even closer this coming season. But I think they'll a bit of a change in the guard because obviously Xhaka's left, and will Havertz play as an 8? Will he play as a number 10? Interesting to see how that plays. And obviously Declan Rice strengthens their midfield. Timber looks pretty. I mean, judging by the Community Shield, looks a pretty decent player. So I think Arsenal the real deal under Mikel Arteta. I expect them to go close again. So Mark.
Yeah, I've got Arsenal second as well. I did nearly change this. I'm not quite sure how long he's out injured for, but obviously Jesus being injured, I think he's a big blow. And I think that I know Eddie Nketiah came in and did fairly well for him in that period.
Yeah.
But I think that probably cost them the league last year, him being injured at quite an important time. I think, so I'm not quite sure how long he's out for at the start of this season. But I think that is a blow that they probably haven't factored into their planning. They've definitely improved their squad. The Havertz one did surprise me a little bit. I didn't quite see that signing come in. So as you say, it'll be quite interesting, actually, I think, to see where he fits tactically within the shape. I think they might be better off having Rice more as a holding midfield player rather than playing in that sort of number 8 role type of thing, box to box. I think I still feel that Rice's best role is sitting in front of the back four, but that's just my view. But I think they're going to go close, but I don't think they're going to win it. I think that they'll fall away again at some point. I think injuries will prove to be, as I say, if Haaland gets injured for City, they're bringing in Alvarez. The drop off. Obviously, there's still a drop off there because clearly, Haaland's going to probably be the greatest player of his generation. I think it's probably fair to say, but they've got a top quality centre forward coming in, whereas Arsenal haven't got that yet, and they've still got that in a couple of other positions as well, which as we saw last year, I think it's fair to say did actually prove to be their undoing in the end. Yeah,
no, really good points, mate. Dennis?
Again, we're going to have a triple bill here and a triple bill next. I'm looking forward to Arsenal fans on Twitter coming up with their excuses. They're getting them in nice and early already, despite winning the league in the window. I'm not, unlike some West Ham fans, which is natural. I'm not particularly bitter about Rice going to Arsenal. He was always going to leave, and he's going to say these things about, he's going to say all the PR, good, positive stuff about Arsenal. He's not going to come up and be like, oh, yeah, it was all right, but I preferred it at West Ham. He ain't going to do that. I'll get that out of the way first. But, I kind of half want them to win trophies to prove certain fans wrong and us right about Rice. But I don't think it's going to be this year. I think that they have the exact same issues, an injury here or there. They've spent wisely. I think Havertz is a smarter signing than people give it credit, just a larger sum than people would, because he fits in, and especially with Jesus' injury, he'll be all right up top for them. But I don't see anyone going toe-to-toe with City until Newcastle start spending all that money, really, if I'm honest. They've got the better players of their generations in certain positions, and they'll get the next ones. That's how it works, sadly. So, yeah, I'm having Arsenal being a relatively distant second, with the only team I haven't mentioned winning the league.
Well, speaking of that same, so we all think Man City are going to win the league again next season. So Dennis, why are they going to win it?
Exact same reasons why they've won it the last couple of years. they've got backups for backups that would get into most other teams' first team. Like their fourth or fifth choice centre back would probably start for most of the teams I have outside of the top 8. And not start ahead of their players, but would get into that team, unless they have some major injury crisis or Pep decides to, quit and become a lumberjack or something like that. I don't really see them not winning the league outright. I don't see them doing another treble, because I think other teams in Europe have also improved and stuff like that. And I think the main thing for City are going to be future plan. I think their main priority is going to be looking at who takes over from Pep in 2 or 3 years, because they've got everything else pretty much sorted now.
Yeah, no, totally, mate. So, obviously, Man City, no English team has won the title in the whole of English football, and not just the Premier League, won the top 4 seasons in a row. But this Man City team, under Pep Guardiola, they're breaking records for fun. 100 points, never been done before. Did it a few years ago. Won the treble, last season. Fantastic achievement. So, Gvardiol, 77 million, second most expensive defender ever. Obviously, you'd like to think he's good. Well, I think from what I saw of him at the World Cup, he looked pretty good, actually. So, obviously, should be for that amount of money. But, obviously, that's a really good signing. And tell you what, Mateo Kovacic as well really goes under the radar. Really good player, 30 million. That's a snip in for a player of his quality in today's market. Obviously, they've lost Gundogan on a free to Barcelona. Obviously, he was vital towards the end of last season, and Mahrez has gone to Saudi Arabia. But look, a lot of people were saying, what about Zinchenko and Sterling when they left last summer? It's like, well, really missed, were they? So, I think, obviously, I say it's never been done before, 4 titles in a row, but this Man City team under one of the greatest managers ever, they're capable of more capable of doing that this season, in my opinion. So, Mark.
Yeah, they're going to win it. I'm not really sure what else to add, really, to what you guys have said. Look, they play the best football. They've got the best players, but it's not just about that with them. As easy as it is with the money that they've got to go and spend big, as obviously, some of the players there that you've just mentioned. It's also as well about Pep as a coach. He's clearly improves those players as well, or certainly improves them into how he wants them to play within his ideal way of playing football. I think Jack Grealish is probably the best example of that in the last sort of 18 months or so. So it'd be interesting to see how someone like Calvin Phillips goes on this year. Will he get more game time fitting into that pattern? But yeah, I mean, look, they're obviously such a joy to watch. Obviously, the only thing, I guess, with City is how long does Pep stay? Have they got a succession plan in place for that to happen? And I guess there's 2 sides of looking at it. One is if they don't get all these charges, was it 115 charges? If none of them stick,
God, yeah.
I think Pep stays for probably for another 3 or 4 seasons, which is probably pretty horrific for the other 19 Premier League teams, because you know what Man City are going to do. They're going to be successful in every competition. If it does stick, then he's kind of already hinted that he would probably be one of the first people out the door. So, that will be interesting. But I think looking ahead to this season, like they are the ones to beat. I do agree with what Dennis was saying. I don't think they'll win back-to-back trebles. But I think if Pep stays on for long enough, looking further ahead, I think City would probably more than likely go and win at least one more treble in the next sort of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, oh god, well, excited for any Man City fans to hear those words, mate. Well, there we are, lads. So some interesting predictions there. Particularly Dennis saying Chelsea third, but obviously we'll see how it goes. So nice one, lads, and we'll see how we got at the end of the season when we do our totals, see how we get on. So Mark, Dennis, appreciate your time. Thanks for all your trials and tribulations going through the teams and the amount of changes. Well, I certainly made, and certain you boys made as well. So I appreciate it. We'll see how we see how we get on this season. So thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe to Catch Up if you're new, and let us know your predictions in the comments below. It'd be great to read those. We'll see you soon. Take care.